Sorry ass DJ.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there? John Franklin, movie reviewer here. Unfortunately on a different YouTube channel, and had to actually use part 2 so I could still use the same name so people know that I'm still around. Just unfortunately that I had to start all over again, and I'm definitely not in a very happy mood about this here. But I mean, the thing is, if I'm frustrated, I could just throw it out on this, other than, hey, it's nobody's fault but mine of what was going on. And like I mentioned in the first video, just made a big mistake, and I'll eventually bring it up, hopefully sooner than later, but we'll just kind of see whenever. A little bit, let me calm down a little bit so I don't feel like I'm yelling and screaming at the audience here about what's going on here. But I am talking about Friday the 13th, ranking the victims' deaths. I am actually on part 5, A New Beginning. And when it comes to most of these deaths, very disappointing, a lot of a lot of just very okay. We do get some that I do really like, but it just feels like it takes a while before we actually get there. We got 19 to talk about here, so I figured let's just get myself started with this here. Number 19. Oh, and by the way, the bottom 4 are Aftermath, so they're going to be kind of quick anyways, but number 19 is going to be Duke, who is actually the ambulance driver. Well, whenever we have Pam and Reggie running away from Jason, Roy to be exact here, they actually find the ambulance, and Pam opens up the door, and there goes Duke. Somewhat falls out of the driver's side with his throat slashed. So it's one of those, it's like, oh, there we go. Number 18 is going to be Anita, which is Damien's girlfriend. Now, with her is Damien's taking a shit in the outhouse, and she starts kind of shaking the outhouse a little bit there just to kind of freak him out. Well, eventually what happens is that it starts getting faster and faster, thinking, oh, okay, so he gets a little upset and says, I'm going to go get you, bitch, and he gets up, puts his pants on, and he's trying to open up the outhouse door, and it actually turns out that she's blocking it with her throat slash, and he gets freaked out, and we'll get to his death later on here, but I'm just like, oh, okay, back-to-back throat slashes there. Number 17 is going to be George, which is Reggie's grandfather. Now, the whole thing is we got Pam walking around the little cabin, goes past a window, and all of a sudden a body flies by, and it's George, and she sees that his eyes were poked out. She screams and runs away, and I'm like, at least it's slightly better. It's number 16 is going to be Matt or Matthew. He is the owner or co-owner with Pam. Well, the thing is, Pam once again sees him. He's actually pinned to a tree with a railroad nail in the forehead. And I actually really do like that one. I just wish that they could have gave us a little bit of a build up on that there. That would have been cool, and maybe he could have been up like maybe 1 or 2 spots possibility. Number 15, I actually have 2 people because they die about 5 seconds apart, if even, and it is Les and Neil. Now, I believe it's Neil who actually gets the machete in the stomach, and Les gets an ice pick in the deck. But what happens with these guys, because first off, I just think they're idiots, but in horror movies, everybody always makes stupid mistakes, and we get those kind of characters. But we actually got Corey Feldman at the very beginning of this movie in a dream, and they got these 2 guys who I just mentioned come over, and they start trying to dig up Jason's grave. And of course, like I said, how one gets it with the machete, one with the ice pick and all that. You know what? The ice pick one was kind of unique, but not really the machete one. But why would his weapons actually been buried with him? I mean, the machete kind of made more sense, but the ice pick really actually never did for me there. Number 14 is a character named Raymond. Now, he ends up at Ethel's door, and he's just kind of a bum and kind of wandering around. And he's like, I haven't had a meal for a couple days. And it's like, do you have any skills that you can do. It's like anything you need me to, and something about clean the shit out of the chicken coop or something, and then I'll fill up your stomach. So with him is he actually sees two people having sex, and he licks his lips like thinking, oh boy, is this guy going to want to try to do something other than I think he wanted a piece of that action, of course. There, he turns one way and he gets stabbed, and it's so quick I couldn't really tell exactly if it was a spear or what it was, but he gets stabbed in the stomach and then he just falls. So again, kind of another dull kill there. Number 13 is going to be Robin. Now, I think Robin's actually an okay character here. Her and I believe it was Billy, and they were watching a movie, and he said about he wanted to make love to her, and she starts laughing, and he runs away. He says something to her, then he kind of walks away. So right after the movie was done, Robin goes upstairs, and, you know, she takes off her shirt, and, you know, she has no bra on, but just her underwear. And she's like, Robin, you are so stupid sometimes. And she's in a bunk bed, and she goes up to the top bunk and about to fall asleep. She actually turns, and there's Billy's dead body that we haven't even got to his death yet. She screamed, and Roy is holding her down, and from the bottom of the bottom bunk, he gets the machete and, you know, stabs her there. And even though it's a kind of a stabby stab, I kind of liked it. You know, through the bunk bed, I thought that was a little different there. Number 12 is going to be Junior. Now with Junior, he gets beat up by Tommy, and then he's on his motorcycle, and he's outside of his mom's cabin, him and his mom's cabin, and he starts driving around, and he's like bleeding from the face and all that, and telling his mother, you know, I want you to chop them up and kill them and make them in little pieces and all that. And she's like trying to make stew for him and all that there. And eventually, after a little too long it goes for me here, he starts screaming and yelling, and all of a sudden he gets his head chopped off. And I will say thank God on that one. I didn't really like the character Junior anyways, that's why he's kind of in the lower half on this here, but I'm just like, oh my God, I wish his head would have been chopped off a little sooner there. Number 11 is his mom Ethel. Now I do like Ethel, but I'm very disappointed with the kill because I heard there was a lot more to this kill. So just like part 7, this one felt like there was a lot of, like, you know, cuts. You know, they had to kind of go, maybe possibly go back and, you know, cut some stuff out to, like, make it, you know, a rated R than an NC-17 or an X rating, all that. Well, anyways, the whole thing is, and we kind of get sort of the thing with Mark with Jason part 2 a little bit, where the camera's back and forth. But with this is that you hear a door go and thinking that it's her son Junior. It's like, finally you got yourself in, come over and have some stew. And it kind of goes back and forth by showing the outside of the window and this noise, and it's like we don't know if anybody's really hearing footsteps and all. And then all of a sudden we get a meat cleaver coming through the window and gets Ethel right in the head, and then her head goes right into the pot of soup there. But I heard there was a lot more to that, and I guess if they would have kept that, you know, that maybe would have gone up a little bit more if it was a little bit more bloodier and gorier there. But this is what we kind of got. Number 10 is going to be a character named Pete. And Pete, as much as I think he's a real a-hole, he's the one that actually is yelling at his friend Vinny because they're having car trouble. He decides to go take a piss. He comes back and he doesn't realize that Vinny's actually dead, kind of leaning over the vehicle by the engine. So he finally actually gets the car turned on, and it's like, come on, Vinny. Next thing you know, you got Roy, who grabs this guy on his forehead and slices his throat. Now, the only reason why I do actually have this one slightly better than the other ones is that I did kind of like, you know, how this actually started off. And, I mean, yeah, it didn't quite finish that well with just a throat slash. It could have had someone who maybe got his head chopped off and it flies out the car window or something. That would have been kind of cool there. But I did kind of really enjoy the build-up of what we actually got out of that there. Number 9, and people might be a little surprised about this, is it's going to be Damien. Damien is one of these where he's the one that said he's actually taking a shit, and after he sees that his girlfriend's dead, someone, which is Roy, is putting a metal pole through the walls of this outhouse here, and eventually at one point he actually gets it like in the leg area close to the knee, and he's actually able to kind of sort of hobble over to another wall. But no surprise that eventually that he got himself stabbed right through like right through the stomach there. Now this is one that I used to actually like almost as much as Rick from Part 3 with the eye popped out there, but I guess I'm a little bit more disappointed with this kill. Number 8 is Violet. Now I have to be honest, I like Violet here, but yeah, hers could have been a lot better there too. While she's actually in her room and she has headphones on and she starts like dancing to whatever she's listening to. So Roy's able to walk through the door, and actually at one point he's hiding, and she's looking at the front door or at her door thinking someone came in, and then she looks away, and here he comes around the corner of the wall there, and he actually, once again, when she finally turns around and looks a second time, he actually has her by the neck, pins her to the wall, lifts her up a little bit, and stabs her somewhat cold. But like I said, I wish her death was still a lot better than what we actually got there. Number 7 is actually where I do really enjoy it, and we actually have a character named Lana. So Lana is actually going to go out and have a date with Bill, more likely go do some drugs somewhere. Well, he actually ends up dying while she's at the restaurant, like just finishing up, cleaning up and all that. And whenever she finally gets outside and into his car, she has no idea where he actually is, but he actually already had some drugs out, already had sniffed up some stuff up his nose there. She sees it, and it's like, hey, you're gonna, waste a lot of this here, silly. She actually sees that there is the killer's legs right there, and she's having trouble getting out of the vehicle. So she finally gets herself out of the vehicle there, and the next thing you know, the axe goes right into her stomach. Now, we actually don't see it until what happens is all of a sudden she just, we get the swing of the axe, and then all of a sudden she leans over, and then when she's on the ground, the axe is actually, in her stomach there. Number 6 is actually going to be Billy, her date here. We actually see him very early in the movie here after the dream sequence there. So the thing is that he's like impatient with her, and like I said, he already took some drugs, and the thing is he gets himself out of the car slightly, opens up the door and kind of sticks his head in and says, Lana, what's taking so long? And then the axe comes down right at the back of his head, but the look that he gives is almost like the cop from Part 2 there. I was just like, and I don't know, maybe I like this one slightly better than the one with the cop there. I just really did like that one, and more of the reaction than the death is what I felt like he had to be up here decently high here. Number 5 is Jake. Now I think I said Billy before, and I meant to say it was actually Jake trying to hit on Robin. So the thing is, after he actually walks away from her and he goes upstairs, he talks to Violet for a moment, and Violet's like, hey, can it wait? So he's like, oh, not really, but he actually walks out anyways, and then all of a sudden he looks up, and there is a hatchet and comes right down. Now in the aftermath of that there, when Robin sees him, we have like this nice scar across his face, and I thought that was a great makeup effect. And again, even though I'm okay with this character, I thought his death was slightly better than the other ones I've actually mentioned there. Number 4 is going to be Joey. Now, believe it or not, Joey is the only one who doesn't get killed by Roy, aka his father. The whole thing is he actually went to a character named Vic, who was actually chopping wood, and Joey just starts talking to him, starts telling him stories and all that, and Vic's not really having it there. But what happens is I really like where Joey actually puts a whole candy bar down for Vic. Vic uses the axe and cuts it in half and says, you know what, man, you're really out of line. I can't believe you did that there, and walks away, and Vic is just so messed up. And Vic goes up to Joey with an axe behind his back and starts hacking him up there. Now, they're actually showing other people like Matt. I think they show Robin is screaming there. But when we get the aftermath with Duke, the ambulance driver, he, moves the sheet, all of a sudden you just see the arm is like on top of, his back and all that, and he's just really bloody as hell. I would have loved to put him at number 1 if Roy actually ended up going after him. That would have been pretty messed up, and then realize at the end, oh shit, that was his own father there. Number 3 is going to be Vinny. Another one that was a really great death that I would have loved to put in the top, 2 there. But the reason why he's in number 3 is because the other 2 I really like a lot better. But after Pete decides to actually go take a piss, all of a sudden we have a road flare, and Vinny thinks it's Pete. And all of a sudden, the killer puts the road flare in Vinny's mouth, and you see that his mouth is all lit up like almost like a candle in a pumpkin. And I thought that was really messed up. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody really ever get killed by a road flare like that. So definitely, like, oh, this is really good here. Number two and number one is actually our couple of Tina and Eddie. So the whole thing was, I was like, ooh, this is going to be a tough one because both of them are really, really messed up. But I ended up actually going with number two, Tina. So after these two have sex, Eddie ends up going to the lake to actually kind of, splash some water on him and kind of like, get the dirt on the sweat off of them after having sex and all of that. So you got Tina just lying there with her boobs out and all of that. And all of a sudden she looks up and here comes the killer with garden shears open and goes down, and we hear a crack, like, cracked her. Well, we don't see it right away, but ended up like cracking her nose. I'm like, oh, that is definitely insane. But when we see it in the eyes or popped out what happened to Reggie's grandfather, we just got the aftermath of that. I thought that was really, really cool. And we got number one, Eddie, and Eddie's coming back after washing himself up. He actually thinks that Tina's sleeping, and whenever he actually turns her over, because he's kind of leaning on the side there, he sees her eyes and her nose, cut up pretty much. So what happens is he actually is so scared he ends up running into a tree, and then Roy ends up having like this leather, some kind of like leather he has. He actually throws it over his eyes, and he actually starts turning it with a tree branch and like turns and turns and turns while Eddie is screaming. And I think because at least we get a little bit more, that is like so messed up in its own way there. And I'm just like, all of a sudden it was actually his head was being crushed, and I thought, ooh, and the blood coming out from his eyes and his nose and all of that was just really messed up. So there you folks go. There are my victims' deaths ranking here for part 5. So I'd be kind of curious what you guys thought about this, if you'd want to rank all 19 or your worst or your best. Give me a comment down below. We shall discuss it. Have yourselves a good one. See you in the next one. Bye.